Hi, today I'm going to show you how to sew the ribbons and elastics on your pointe shoes. Now, before you sew the ribbons and elastics on, always check the fit of the shoe with your instructor first. That way, if the instructor has any issues with the fit of the shoe, you can still come back into the store and exchange it. However, once you've sewn everything on, it's too late for that. So if this is one of your first pairs of pointe shoes, it is very important that you ask the instructor how they would like you to sew the pointe shoes, because dancers sew them in many different ways, and this is just one of the common ways, and also the way that is detailed in the instructions in the stitch kit by Buntheads. Another thing is that some instructors prefer the thin elastic and some instructors prefer the thick elastic, so that is something else that you might want to ask your instructor before you sew. In order to sew the pointe shoes, you will need the elastic, your ribbons, which usually come packaged like this, a needle and thread. I highly suggest the Bunthead stitch kit or something similar. It comes with a very heavy-duty waxed nylon thread, which will hold up better in your pointe shoes. It comes with 2 needles and a set of instructions with pictures. And you will need a pair of scissors. And that's it. So, this is how you do it. Begin by pulling out a length of thread. Here I used about 2 feet. However, you could work with a smaller length. You'll want to thread the needle, pull it about halfway down through the thread, and then once you get it down there, you will tie the 2 ends together to form a knot. After you've tied the knot, you will take your scissors and cut off the excess tail. Fold the material at the back of the heel over the shoe to create these 2 right triangles. Next, you will use a pen and make a mark on the inside of the shoe and the creases so that you can use this as a guide later as to where to put your ribbons. Place the end of the ribbon inside the shoe, outside of where you marked it, 1/2 inch to 1 inch down the shoe, and then trace the end. This will give you a guide to be able to sew straight later on. As you can see, the ribbon will be on the outside of that mark towards the front of the shoe. And then repeat the process on the other side. Most ribbon also has a shiny side and a non-shiny side. If you do have this ribbon, make sure this shiny side will be facing out. Here, to prevent fraying, I am folding up the ends of the ribbon. When you do this, fold up the shiny side of the ribbon up on top of itself so that the fold is facing the inside of the shoe so it won't be seen. Here I am doing it the opposite way so that for this model shoe that we use in the store, you can see where the fold is. When you begin to sew, make sure that you only pierce through the cotton lining of the shoe and not through the satin. That way when you're done, there won't be any stitches showing on the outside of the shoe. You will see that I use a whip stitch to sew around the edges of the ribbon and then a running stitch to sew across the top, which basically just means I am looping the thread through the material and the ribbon, and then when we get to the tops, it will go over, under, over, under. So if you're not used to sewing, just be patient and go slow. If you make any mistakes, you can always cut the thread out and start over. Be sure to make the stitches fairly close together. Also, if you notice that your stitches aren't tight enough or you see loops coming up, that probably just means you're not pulling the thread tight enough at the end of the stitch. You also want to make sure you get a good pull on both sides of the thread. When you get to the top of the ribbon near the drawstring, you're going to use an in and out running stitch. The most important thing is to not sew directly into the drawstring, but under it. That way you can still use the drawstring later on. When you get to your last stitch, leave a loop open, pass the thread and needle through it twice, and pull firmly to create a knot at the end. You might want to do this a couple times with a few more stitches to make it really secure. When you're done, just cut off the excess, and that's it. You're done sewing your first ribbon on. Now you will just repeat the process with the other side, which I have sped up for you. To begin sewing your elastic, fold over the back of the heel. You'll see the back seam running up the middle of the heel. On either side of the back seam is where the two ends of the elastic are going to go. You will sew the edges of the elastic into the shoe the same way that you sewed the ribbons, with the whip stitch across the edges and a running stitch across the top or under the drawstring. You can also trace the edges of the elastic here as I did with the ribbon earlier. That way you will have a straight guideline for you to sew the elastic so it won't end up crooked if you don't feel comfortable doing it freehand. You will also want to be conscious here of only piercing the inner layer of the shoe and not actually going all the way through the satin. That way you won't see the stitches on the outside of the shoe. There are some dancers that actually sew the elastic on the outsides of the shoe against the satin if the elastic is causing them any irritation when they are wearing it on the inside. So that is also something to think about. When you reach the piece of elastic near the drawstring, again be careful not to actually sew into the drawstring and just do the in and out stitches directly under the drawstring. It's a little tougher to get the needle through the elastic because it's thicker than the ribbon. If you have to, just push something against the end of the needle to get it all the way through. When you reach your last stitch, just hold up that loop of elastic before you pull the thread and loop the needle through it 2 times and pull down to create the knot. You're going to want to do this an extra time or two just to make sure it's secure. And then just cut off the extra thread. At this point, you will want to actually put the shoe on and pull that piece of elastic around your ankle and make a mark on the elastic where it's giving you a nice snug fit. Cut the elastic about 1/2 inch to 1 inch below where you made the mark, and that is where you will sew that piece in to the fabric on the other side of the back seam on the heel. You will just repeat the process here the same way that you sewed the other side of the elastic on. And that's it. Now your pointe shoes are ready to go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.